All right, everybody. So now the Ask the Experts panel. I'll probably stand over here and float back and forth, but I have a list of questions here to kind of facilitate and kick us off. But this is a Q&A session, so feel free. I'll kind of walk around with a mic and give people the opportunity to ask questions. Hopefully that works. Yes. Last but not least, seat right there for you. All right, so if we're ready, we'll get started. So our first question, as a caregiver, I struggle with asking for help. Do you have any advice on where I can start?
The mic instantly goes to me. Is it on?
It is,
so,
yeah.
So I introduced myself earlier, but the one thing I didn't say is I'm from a Huntington's family. My husband was diagnosed with Huntington's disease when we were very young. And so I was a caregiver, I said, all of my 20s and 30s. I know you guys don't think so, but I'm almost, 50, so I was about, I know. So yes, this question is incredibly hard to answer. So we came up at Help for HD with a publication. It was called How Can I Help You? So the one thing is that a lot of times as caregivers, people ask us, what can I do? What can I do? And the one thing I try to tell people is you're putting one more thing on us. Our day from the time we wake up until the time we go to sleep, if we get to go to sleep some days, we have a million things to think about and to care for and to do. So asking us this question puts one more thing on us. So we came up with a publication of different things that you can hand to people so they just know what to do. And I always tell people, don't ask a caregiver what you can do, just do it. Bring a sack of groceries and drop it on the front porch. Mow a lawn. Call us. Be our emergency contact in case something happens to us. Because our loved ones, then what are they going to do? That's a huge thing we don't think about until it's too late, and then we're in crisis mode, right? So we do have that publication. The second thing I would say is ask your community for help because they get it. So I know friends and family are so important, but they don't always get it, but your community does. And I cannot tell you how important it is to join a support group because they will be there for you when no one else is. And I was not a support group person. I'm like, no, I'm gonna do this on my own. And then I joined a support group and it was the best thing I did in my entire life. So, did that answer the question? Anyone?
So, any other comments? Okay, before I go back to the list, thank you. Before I go back to the list, let's see if there are any questions in the audience. Just raise your hand. We've got a mic in the back. Okay. How can parents talk to their children about Huntington's disease in an age-appropriate and honest way?
As, again, even though the crow's feet say otherwise, I represent the youth. Speaking about Huntington's disease can be extremely daunting as a parent. I think all of us who care for someone else always want the best of intentions of protection and keeping them safe. And sometimes that makes us a little bit more scared to share about Huntington's disease. There is no wrong or right time, and I think that's a really important thing to think about. What we always suggest to get started with is you have to first understand, what are you scared of? What are your fears? What are your hopes? What are your stigmas that you're facing? Because if you don't address those first for you, it's very easy to put those on to people that you're first introducing and talking about Huntington's disease to. So you have to kind of set your own feelings and thoughts aside and then find conversational ways to start that. And that really depends on your child's personality, depends on their age. And so it's really by starting with small things. You may have noticed that grandma has changed a little bit. She has something called Huntington's disease. You may notice that we're going to the doctor more. Things that are more relatable for them. You don't have to sit there and say, Huntington's disease is a neurodegenerative disease that's kind of like having ALS, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's wrap up into one. That's a lot of information to try to register and download. We have a pamphlet as well as our website that has a lot of conversation starters that are done by an age-appropriate way. But as guardians, as parents, you may see a child who sits there and says, okay, and they're good with that information. You may have people who say, tell me more, how can I help? And they may start to become a support for you even. And you may have people who retreat after talking about it. All of those things are okay. It's just their way of processing. Arming yourself with the information, having an open relationship, and being there for when they have those questions is the most important thing to do. But as Katie mentioned, you also need your own support. So as you're doing this, you are supporting someone who has Huntington's disease or is tested positive, as well as supporting a child grappling with the realities of what this could mean. So you as a caregiver, you as someone who is gene positive, symptomatic, everybody in this community needs to continue to support themselves so they can support others as well. But we're always here happy to talk through some of those resources as well.
What are some common misconceptions that families face when they get that first diagnosis?
Well, I think one thing that is really hard when you start learning about HD is, I think as a caregiver, you're really scared when you hear like all these symptoms they start throwing at you, right? And I want you to always remember, if you met one person with HD, you met one person with HD. All of our stories are different, but they all rhyme. But I think sometimes we get so overwhelmed with like, oh, neuropsychiatric, hallucinations, delusions, this and that. And so as caregivers and families, like, we're always watching. My husband never had a hallucination or a delusion, but I was waiting for them every single day. So I think not misconceptions, I think from sometimes us getting too much information, but then not being told that this may not happen to us. We need to be alert, we need to be ready in case we can, to keep ourselves and our loved ones protected, but it may not happen. I think that's one misconception. I think a misconception also is that, you know, we live the same lives as everyone else. We go to soccer games, we do the same things. We do have a little bit more challenges, but we live life as we should. Huntington's does not define you. It's going to make things challenging, for sure. But, you know, we still, my husband and I and our children, lived the best we could, and then I think, you know, I think there's so many, but did I hit the right thing?
No, I think you did, yeah.
I just wanted to share a little bit from the young person perspective. There's been a history of misconceptions that young people don't need the same amount of support, and that's just not true because, you know, as you think about the developmental cycle, everybody goes through adolescence, they go through those lovely teenage years. You go through these more independent years where you're talking about family planning, career choices. And at some time, you typically find out about Huntington's disease in that journey. And that looks very different from age 5 to 15 to 25 and 35 because there's so much happening behind the scenes. So sometimes we tend to forget about young people needing support because they start to get bombarded with pressures as well. And, you know, I'm gonna kind of switch the word misconceptions to outside stigmas and pressures when you're thinking about you should get tested. You should, all of these shoulds that start to get piled onto people impacted gets extremely overwhelming, but it is your choice. All of these are your choices, and so being armed with that information is extremely important, but if you don't have that base of support underneath you, then you're not gonna be prepared and ready to start intaking and absorbing all of that educational information to help you be the best decision maker for your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't emphasize that enough, right? You don't have to do this specific thing, right? Everybody's journey is different, and you know, everybody comes to the journey from a different place, and there isn't a right answer necessarily.
And just real quick, you know, I think it's funny that we're the experts because you guys are all the experts. So we live with it every day, right? You guys, so if you guys have any please let each other know, because I love these panels because we get to sit out with all of you and we learn more literally than typically the experts know.
Mm-hmm. Allison?
Oh, and I just wanted to add, like, you don't have to have all the answers all at once. As a lawyer, a lot of families ask me questions, and my answer most of the time is, it depends. What is your personal circumstance? What are steps 1 through 5 that we can figure out right now? Because if you try to do all of it immediately, it's not gonna work. You're gonna get overwhelmed. It's a lot. I talk to people all the time. I'm like, this is overwhelming. Let's take this one step at a time. You don't have to have everything figured out today. Sometimes the big thing is just figuring out the right questions or talking to the right people.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's a misconception or just existential dread, but when my mother was diagnosed, I was in high school, and that diagnosis, that was it. This is the end of my life. I have Huntington's disease. I'm sure of it. Every twitch, every forgotten thing, every mistake, I was sure this is the end. And it wasn't. And it took me a long time of, kind of processing what had happened to me and my family. It wasn't that my future was gone. It was that my future was just a little bit different. And being around folks going through different stages of the journey and seeing that life does continue and you can have a very powerful and successful and love-filled life, that was definitely changing for me. Any other comments from the panel? No? All right, back to the audience. Any questions? Over here.
Thank you. My name is Duke, and my wife and I are from Goldsboro, North Carolina. My wife was diagnosed with Huntington's in 2015. She hasn't been back to work since 2021, but I noticed year after year she becomes less emotionally connected, and I feel like I'm more of a caregiver than a husband now, and I feel bad about that, and I just need some type of insight on the emotional connection between a husband and a wife.
I would love to sit with you in a corner, and then, for a couple hours after this panel. It's really hard. And we did a caregiver group last night, and we talked a lot about intimacy. And intimacy changes over the course of HD. And it's really hard to accept that I didn't sleep in the same bed as my husband for 7 years. But that was our reality. But we became intimate in different ways. I always say, the loss of the intimacy that was lost, there was a deeper love that was gained that most people that are married for 80 years often never find. Because I loved him in a different way than I think I even thought that my love changed, and it was so much stronger. It's not easy, it's hard not having that someone you can depend on as much, and you kind of walk this alone, you feel like. But so that's all I have to say. But I have a lot we can say one-on-one together. But I do think that is the hardest thing, is losing that intimacy and that person you fell in love with, and hearing I love you, but they do. It's just hard to articulate and say it for them. But like I said, your role has changed, and your role is very, very important. And your love is it's more than you even know. And when it's all said and done, you're going to realize that the love that you two have for each other is so unique and so beautiful. It's just different.
I just want to say thank you, Duke. That is a topic that I think so many people can resonate with, and the bravery it takes to say that. Thank you for that.
All right. Any questions in the audience? Okay. How does one start to find and build a care team? And Dr. Moore, maybe you could talk a little bit about this. What does the beginning kind of look like?
Sure. So I didn't get to introduce myself before. I'm Dr. Katie Moore. I'm one of the neurologists at the Duke Center of Excellence for Huntington's disease. And I think the way that people build a healthcare team is very individualized. We have a lot of people who connect with our Center of Excellence for years before coming in through the doors and seeing Dr. Scott or myself, and so those people are connected with our social workers. You can get connected with HD Reach and their support team, and they can help connect you with local providers, and who might be a good resource in the area. I do think it's important to, if you can't come to a Center of Excellence, at least have a neurologist who's able to help you and understand what's going on. As many of you will know, when you go to see the doctor, you often are the one explaining what Huntington's is. And it's nice to be in a place where they can explain to you what's going on, and at least have a mutual understanding of what's happening with you. What we're able to offer at our Center of Excellence is a whole team of dedicated professionals. And so when I think about care for Huntington's and people with Huntington's and their families, it's not one-dimensional. And so one of the things that we have done is to bring that team together for you. So when you come to see us, you get to see one of the docs, at least one of the docs, and you'll see our teams. We have physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, all of which is important throughout the whole journey. We have our wonderful social work team who's able to help you navigate a lot of different kinds of problems. And we even have a chaplain who's part of our team who's not there to turn you into anything, but to help support you in the emotional and spiritual journey that is Huntington's disease. So who you bring onto your team is very important, but I think it's also important to know that it can be a broad range of people that can be helpful to circle around you and your family and support you through your journey.
And I just wanted to add on to that, because since we're going with team, we can use a sports analogy. Team members get traded. Sometimes your team is bigger, sometimes it's smaller. Your team should include a social worker, but it can include a lawyer. It can include all of the organizations in this room, HD Reach, Help for HD, HDSA, and it doesn't mean we're gonna be a consistent part of your journey, but it means at some point we should be part of your journey because we can help you access all of those resources and just be a connecting place for you. And it really, as you get into this, there's so many ways everything interacts together. So the more people you feel safe talking to, the more people who can help you, the better.
Yeah, that's a perfect lead into my next question. Is it okay to get involved and then take a break?
Yes. Next question. No. So you are living life, and there's going to be times when you feel like you have enough energy and want and desire to give back, to volunteer, to share your story, but it's also fine to retreat. One of my friends who is moving into the later stages of HD always talks about her spoons of energy. So each day she's given 12 spoons of energy. Sometimes brushing her teeth takes 3 spoons instead of a half of spoon. Sometimes she doesn't have a good night's sleep, so even getting out of bed, getting ready for the day, she may use all of her spoons before lunchtime. Then she either has to make that decision of pulling into the next day's worth of energy to keep going with that day or to take a break. That happens with HD, it happens as a caregiver, it happens in any kind of retrospect. So do what is best for you. Don't feel like you have to overcommit. It is fine to retreat. It is fine to take a break. It's fine to have that time to just be and have that respite. So we encourage you to get involved, and Katie and I will talk about that in a session later today. But it's also about what works best for you, and if you need to have that time off, take the time off. It's totally fine.
I'll just add too, from a accessing medical care perspective, we do have patients that say you're at risk for Huntington's and you want to check in and talk about genetic testing or talk about, I have this twitch or what could this possibly mean. It's totally fine to come in and see us and then wait a few years and maybe come back. Once you've come in to see a doctor, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be coming in, terribly often. So it's okay to kind of come in and out of that space as well as you need.
Years ago, I was my mother's caretaker, and I was facing a similar situation. I was feeling burned out. I was trying to support the organizations that were providing her support, and I kind of steeped myself in Huntington's disease constantly. It was everywhere around me. And somebody said something to me once that really stuck with me. You're in a plane, there's turbulence, those masks come down from above you. What do they tell you when you're on that plane? You need to put that mask on yourself first, because there's nothing that you can do if you're not in a place to provide that support and care. So think about that when you're trying to find that respite. Take that break, re-energize yourself. There's a lot of calms between storms in this community, right? And when you have that calm, give yourself some grace, be patient with yourself, re-energize yourself, because you're going to go right back to it. We all do, right? So take that time. All right. Questions? No hands? Okay. Let's see. This one's for you, Victoria. Can you talk a little bit about the trials that HSG is involved in right now and how folks can get more involved in supporting?
So at HSG, one of our goals is supporting research. All research that's going on. We support individuals who are looking for research and help guide them. whether or not we're actually participating in running the trial or not. We are actively involved in a lot of the research that's going on today, but I think the best advice I could give anyone is, if you're interested in research, start looking at clinicaltrials.gov, go to HDBuzz, HDSA. HDSA has a wonderful explanation of all of the research and different types of research available, from interventional studies that involve treatment to observational studies where you can enroll in Enroll HD, which is a long-term observational study gathering data, or HSD, we have My HD Story. It is a observational, it's a study that you can participate from the comfort of your own home. So you're answering questions, working through the internet, giving some insight into your experience and how you live with HD. And that information helps us guide pharmaceutical companies and different companies on how to build their trials, how to make their studies work with the patients that they're studying, basically. So,
And Dr. Moore, can you talk a little bit about the role of Duke in trials and executing them and all the things?
All the things. Okay. Seatbelts on, everybody. So as a Center of Excellence and a group of team members who are very interested in improving the care of people with Huntington's, we are involved in clinical trials. And right now we have Enroll HD, which we're very active in. We also have close collaboration with the iMind trial, which is some ophthalmologists at Duke who are working on using basically pictures of the back of the eye to help better diagnose and track diseases like Huntington's. And we'll be starting a new interventional clinical trial soon. So that's something we're very active in. We've also been really privileged to receive support from HSG for one of our fellows. So a big thing that I work on is bringing on new docs who are interested in HD so that we can improve care in that way. And we've been really privileged to receive financial support for him and his training and his research for the upcoming academic year. So there's many different ways that we are trying to support research and moving people forward. So for Dr. Hayden, who's our fellow, we're going to train him for another 15 months or so, and then he's going to take off and do his own research for HD2. So that is all kind of intertwined together in our center.
Yeah, that's great. And if a family comes to the clinic and they're interested in getting involved in a clinical trial, but maybe they're not the right fit for the trials happening at the clinic, do you still provide guidance and help them access? Yep. Oh, I'm sorry.
What would it cost me or my family to visit your clinic personally and out of pocket, and what would it cost me to enroll in a research study?
Good question. One of the things that doctors don't know is how much things cost. Okay? But what I can tell you is that no clinical trial should cost you money. If someone is asking you for money to participate in a clinical trial, run away. Okay? So one of the things about our team at the Duke clinics is they can help you understand before you arrive what your clinic visit will cost. So you can always reach out to the clinic and they can say, okay, well, what kind of insurance do you have? We certainly take uninsured patients, but what insurance do you have? What will that look like for you? But we're really good about taking insurance. But yeah, for clinical trials, there usually is compensation in the other direction. Right, you're not paying for clinical trials. Now, one of the things about enrolling in trials that is closely monitored by different groups that make sure that clinical trials are fair is that you're not going to get thousands and thousands of dollars for participating in clinical trials, right? Then, but they should help compensate for your time and your travel. So it's not a money-making enterprise, but you're certainly not turning over any cash.
Can I add to that real quick? So my husband and I, when he was alive, and my children, we've been in 11 clinical trials and studies. And one thing that's really interesting is when we started doing clinical trials, and I was a curator in My HD Story. My dear friend Irish Olson and Karen Anderson had me curate that study, and how important I didn't realize us participating in this type of research was. until I became a curator, and I'm like, wow, this is like really important for the FDA and for AI learning and for us to expedite drug development in the future. So back to my point. Getting involved in a clinical trial is like, right now it sounds really appealing, right? Like back when we were looking at fish oil, blueberries. I've been an advocate for HD for 20 years. Yeah, blueberries. Now we're looking at gene therapies. We're looking at disease, life-changing therapies. But it takes so much more than us popping a fish oil pill like that my husband did as our first trial, right? And so I think the one thing that I wish someone told me about clinical trials when I first started was how much preparation you need, because my first trial that we went into, I believe it was CoQ10 enzyme, we got the drug, all the money was spent, and we did not retain that trial. And now, knowing what I know now, I feel horrible that we didn't retain that trial. But we were not prepared enough, and it was so much stress on my husband and myself, driving to the university, the huge VA, finding parking, paying for parking. Even though we were reimbursed, we still had to put the money out. And it was just overwhelming. My husband came home and had behaviors for 2 days. It just rocked him. And then, so what did that do? That rocked me. And so I couldn't handle it. But then what I realized after doing multiple trials was if I was prepared, right? I brought food, I brought his favorite drinks, I brought his hurry up and wait time, because a clinical trial, they're gonna hurry you up and then they're gonna wait you for 3 hours. And then they're gonna hurry you up and they're gonna wait you for 3 hours. And so crossword puzzles, iPads, like anything I could do for me and my husband just to spend some time. Like, we don't have our kids. This is awesome. Even though we're in a VA, like, let's talk. I tried to figure out ways to make it successful, because that is the most important thing. And I think we've gotten really good as organizations and our industry partners at doing better at preparing people for clinical trials than they did 20 years ago. But we still have work to do. So I think definitely, and then I think also if you're in a position, and let you know, if you feel like you can no longer retain a clinical trial, that is your right. You can. You don't have to if it's too much. But I also would talk to your clinical trial coordinator, because there are things that they can do to support you further to help you keep going. Like if it's a financial strain, right? Like, I can't keep prepaying for these hotel rooms and getting reimbursed. That is not financially okay for me. Then maybe that clinical coordinator can go to the trial sponsor and say, look, we need to prepay for this hotel for them. And that's the way we're going to keep them in the trial. Advocate for yourself. You're the best person to do it. So, sorry.
So back to your question about clinical trials at Duke. No, that was really good, because I think it is important, and one of the things I was going to say is really working with us or whoever your HD doc is to say, well, what do these clinical trials mean? What's involved? What am I going to have to put in on my side? Because once you're in a clinical trial, gosh, we really want you to complete the whole thing, right? Again, you have the right to step away from that, but it messes with the numbers, essentially. So the other exciting thing, for just to say out loud, is there's so many clinical trials in HD right now, and that is a big change from what has been in the past. And so not every center is going to have every clinical trial, right? But we collaborate with each other. We're always talking behind the scenes, hey, we're enrolling in this, can you send us patients? This is a very collaborative group. And so if you come to our clinic, you may see flyers from UVA and Vanderbilt and things that they are working on. And then there's a huge variety in what clinical trials can look like. It can look like a survey that you're filling out at home on your computer, all the way to brain surgeries and different things like that. So it's a wide array of what that can look like, and your doctor should be able to talk through, when you say research, what do you mean? What are your expectations? What are the things that you're looking to do and to participate in? And it might be a good idea to start out with a survey and not going directly to some of these more involved clinical trials. Like, dip your toes in and see what works for you. And then one of the things that we do consistently is direct people to the resources that we're mentioning before, clinicaltrials.gov, Clinical Trial Finder, all of these things, so that you can look and see what's the best fit for you. And finally, I'll say, if you say, hey, doc, I found this study online, or someone told me about this, it's not here at Duke, can you look at it with me? we are happy to do that and help to walk through and be kind of a neutral party to say, all right, well, this is what this is for. This is what I think are the things to ask the coordinator about and that kind of thing to help us all work together to make sure these clinical trials are a potentially good fit for you.
Thank you so much. And if you didn't know, here's my HD Reach plug. If you didn't know, HD Reach has relationships with pretty much every HD care center in the region. So it could be Vanderbilt, it could be Duke, it could be Wake Med, it could be UNC, it could be USC down in Columbia. If we don't have the answers, we can point you to the people that do. So, HD Reach is definitely part of that sort of ecosystem to help you all navigate. All right, in the back here. Sorry, Grant.
Hi, thank you for being here today. My question about clinical trials are most of them or all of them for symptomatic patients? Or are there any out there for our young family members who haven't shown any symptoms yet, but they know that they have HD?
So one of the things that gets challenging with going like early disease, thinking of the pre-symptomatic or prodromal, is that we still need more work to understand some of those small nuances of how to measure that change. Traditionally, some of the biomarkers that are used, some of the measurements are used, have traditionally focused on more of the chorea symptoms but we know that there are so many other small changes that are happening. What we're seeing is that investigators are starting to look earlier in the disease progression, but participating in things like Enroll HD is extremely important. They're going to be unveiling a next step of Enroll HD called Enroll 2.0 that is really going to be targeting better understanding the early changes that can happen in Huntington's disease. Because right now we just don't know enough. And for clinical trials, you need to be able to show fast efficacy, which means that the therapy is, one, safe, but then two, is doing what's intended. And if you don't have a way to show that quickly, then that's when you get into, what is the ethics of having a very long, drawn-out clinical trial if you're doing that over the course of someone's 10-year journey versus knowing that quicker. I will also share that out of UCL, which is a University College London, Dr. Sarah Tabrizi's lab has been doing the HD young adult study, and it's an observational study that they've been doing now for, I think, 4 years. They showed their 4-year data where they've been able to look at some small changes within the brain, in the putamen, putamen, if I can say it correctly, of how some of these things are changing. So their hope is in that the next couple of years, there could be a therapy that's already developed now that they could then move into this population of either early symptoms or, ideally pre-symptomatic once we know that someone is gene positive, to have that intervention as soon as possible, just not quite ready yet. With that, some of the regulatory agencies want to make sure the safety profile is there when they're looking at going into people who don't have measurable symptoms yet. So there's a lot to be discovered there, but we're moving into that direction. Of course, it's never soon enough, but things are moving in that way right now. But I would really strongly suggest to pay attention to what's happening with this next stage of Enroll 2.0, because if we have more and more people participating, then that will show more and more data that we can hopefully pull from to get to that next step faster.
Any other comments? Oh, perfect.
Never.
Try again.
All right, good morning. My name is Granty Haven. My wife has Huntington's, 2 kids at risk. Duke, just to let you know, I'm in New Bern, right down the road from you, so if you ever need anything, let me know. So my question is, advocacy has become really my way of getting power back in a powerless situation. Through that journey, I've learned, there's been a lot of frustration. I've found a lot of gaps, and my focus has been on more long-term care, small communities. North Carolina has a lot of tiny communities, and the resources you get from Raleigh, Winston-Salem, Charlotte, et cetera, you're not going to get in places like New Bern. So this is, a focus of my effort with making things better there. So my question is for you from an advocacy standpoint, because I feel it's always good for us as advocates to reflect and have some constructive criticism ultimately. Where do you, in each of your opinions, find from an advocacy standpoint, whether that's in your individual lanes or across the spectrum of advocacy, things need to be better. Like collectively, we need to do better within the advocacy world, or within your specific focuses, we could do better. Just, I guess, down the line of what you think.
We definitely could do better. Like, there's no doubt. I think that one, listening to you, just like what you said, and us actually taking the time and sitting with you, and listening and figuring out. I will tell you, I just got back from Genentech. I spent 3 days there at a conference. I actually only did 2. It was a 3-day conference, and we talked about burnout and advocacy. And it is true. We're small. We're low funded compared for what we have to do, right? And so we're all just kind of grasping on like the best we can do with the resources we have. So I think, though, when we have people like you coming and saying, look, I'm going to do the footwork beside you, we're like, okay, great. Like, as long as but as far as funding's really hard to start these new programs, just to be completely honest, for someone, a small one like us. And I'm sure we're all small in HD, unfortunately. We're not like, like the Alzheimer's Cancer Association, right? We're all doing the best we can. But I think partnerships, I think another thing that's been really important, for the first time ever, you have seen your nonprofits come together and work together for the first time in history. And I think that is because the leadership is so wonderful. No, I'm kidding. But I do think, and you've never seen this in history. So we are talking and we are communicating. We're trying to find collaboration together on how we could be stronger and how we could be better. But the key is you. Right? So come to us, talk to us, and let's figure it out together. Because sometimes the gaps, we actually don't even know about regional gaps sometimes, Not that we could do a ton of things. You guys are so lucky to have HD Reach. I wish every single state had an HD Reach, man. But yeah, I definitely think talk to us, please.
One thing I'll just say really quick is your story really matters. And your story really matters to your elected officials, okay? So find out their phone number, call, and leave a message with their answering machine or their assistant, and you would be surprised how much you can move the needle by telling your story. So that's something that is, can feel like a big ask. I don't like getting on the phone, but that kind of thing can be really important, and it's, I think, achievable for each of us, right? We want to do these big things. We want to change the care that's available in small communities. I'm a Raleigh girl, I get it, right? But I think it's important to know that each of your stories is really important, and they are there to listen, so call them.
And one of the things that's really important to talk about with this conversation of advocacy is actually so many different things. Like, advocacy is an incredibly broad definition. Like, what we're doing at the federal level is different advocacy than what people can do on a day-to-day level, because the reality is, when you are part of a rare disease community like Huntington's disease, every day of the rest of your life, you are advocating for yourself, your loved one, and your community. And so it's also like, what are your goals? Are you trying to educate a local long-term care facility about what Huntington's disease is so they will take HD patients? And we want that feedback so we can help create those resources, have those conversations. Like, advocacy, that is really one of the things that Help for HD is doing, and that we're trying to do more too, is like talking to local police departments. Like, that is also advocacy. And so figuring out what your smaller goals are, and part of these whole bigger goals that we're also talking about, so we can help give you those tools and have those conversations. Because for most people, advocacy is not something they inherently know. It's something that has to be learned and taught and practiced.
From our perspective, we are international too. So we do a lot of advocacy work, and one of the biggest things that we do is to have young people have a seat at the table. We still face that constantly, where people say, it's not affecting you right now, don't worry about it, or it's not as important for you, and that's just not correct. I mean, the conversation about pre-symptomatic research participation, the fact of, let's talk about health inequities in the US, then you add in the global perspective of that, lack of diversity, lack of support systems, lack of people's willingness and inability to share stories because of real stigmas and fears that exist that also happen in the US, but talking about it globally as well. So a lot of the work, when you see us in our May campaigns, we're not advocating for a lot of what you would say like traditional advocacy or that big A advocacy. We're arguing for a seat at the table because we hear it quite often that young people don't matter as much, which is just simply not true. So we continue to share those voices of how they're impacted through the work with us and our partners. Yeah, that's a really tough one. I think community building is the first step to that. There are so many people who have experienced that hearing those peer-to-peer experiences and thoughts are really important, because like we talked about getting involved, it's fine to take a step back. So where can you spend your time is a personal decision, but I think it's helpful to talk with other people. There are some side groups like HD PACE where they're looking at creating a movement specifically that's run by community members that are like early symptomatic or pre-symptomatic or things like that are doing a lot of really great work, but you can't really find that until you make that connection, you start to meet people. And so by being here, it's really great because you're getting to meet people and do those things. I say follow along on social media, see who is exciting to watch, what organizations are out there, what group chats are available, because then you'll continue to start meeting more and more people. But that's a really hard thing, and unfortunately it's a very personal choice because that balance will look differently at each point in your time, and other opportunities may come up that you're like, yes, I want to get involved with this, or no, maybe not right now. So I think it's through those personal connections and just kind of working through it and learning with what works best for you.
I also think like what we said continuously is your voice is so important in every advocacy, like because caregivers, we overrun you. We will every day of the week. We stand up and we're super loud, and your guys' voice is so much more important and impactful. I remember when my husband stood up in front of a government agency and we got $1.9 million for stem cell research for Huntington's, and I swear it was because of his testimony, not mine. So please, if you have a desire, if you have a background, please come join us because we need you.
Victoria, what do you think as it relates to clinical trials and that landscape?
Well, I think as far as advocacy, there's a gap in research in terms of we're aware of the patient burden, we're aware of the site burden, and one of the things that we do at HSG is really work with our industry partners and our academic partners to be mindful and appreciate what we're asking patients and asking sites to do in terms of time, in terms of commitment. And so we do whatever we can when we're reading through these protocols to say, hey, I think we could try this to help ease the burden on patients, or I think we can look at how can we separate these visits, or how can we combine these visits, or have you considered doing XYZ to make it something the patient or the site can do more easily and have greater outcomes and participation and commitment.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
I have a question about research in general. I'm part of an HD family, and obviously we're a small group of, like, there aren't a lot of Huntington's disease individuals in the world, right? Not even in our country. I think we can, almost all the active HT folks could sit inside the Ohio State Stadium 3 times. Maybe not, my numbers may be wrong. But there are research sites wanting to do research. There's drug companies wanting to do, find the medicine that helps slow it down. Ideally, one day, it's a chronic disease, and we live with a chronic disease. like diabetes, but it's not a death sentence. From the moment you get told you have Huntington's, and you're like, okay, in 15 years, right, your life sucks or you're dead. So from a family member, when we talk about how do you go find a research trial, because without HD patients supporting your trial, there's no trial, and there's not a cure. So I've heard, look at HSG, look at HD Buzz, look at HDSA, look at clinicaltrials.gov, look at HD Reach. That's a lot to say to someone who wants to be a part of a trial, but that's already managing issues at home, full-time work. Maybe they're not savvy on a computer. Maybe they just can't handle being out there and all the community things. Where's that one place that you can go that, or maybe it's here next time, where there's a pamphlet that says, these are the trials out there. This is a family member trial. This is a patient trial. This is a gene therapy trial. This is a symptomatic trial. Where can it be a little bit more altogether to take the onus off the family? I hope that makes sense.
I think one thing, so there's a couple of different things. You're right, there's a lot of acronyms, there's a lot of organizations. A lot of people build trust within the people who are running those things. So you might see somebody who has an affinity to follow and participate with one organization at a time. So that becomes their one source. I think one of the biggest things is, and this is specifically for people who have the ability to go to a neurologist, is finding a neurologist who's going to fight for you and help bridge that gap for you, because they know from the medical side of things, what are some trials that this individual could participate in or may be a good fit for that. So one thing that I always encourage people speaking with their medical team or their support team is saying, I'm very interested in continuing to learn about what trials are out there. I need you to help me try to cipher that down a little bit to understand what would be a good fit medically. And then you can gain that support from the associations and social workers on, what does this mean for me individually on top of what the science says. So there's a lot of options, and a lot of things we're talking about are a lot of options, but it's important to build that support system around you that you feel comfortable asking those questions, you feel like are going to keep you informed, fight for you, give you those options. So then all of those options really get narrowed down into a much more manageable team, because it is extremely overwhelming with the amount of information that's out there. But we're all there to help you as individuals find out what works best for you.
And
We have a couple more minutes for a couple more questions. Are there any in the audience? Oh, perfect. Yep.
Oh, okay. I just want to circle back to advocacy, because there's a huge group of advocates here, and there is training within HDSA. If you go to their webpage and you go down to one of the pull-down menus, there's a whole section devoted to advocacy. Shirley Hughes here is the state captain for North Carolina, and she and I have both undergone the formal training with Phyllis Foxworth. And this year, Phyllis is doing a virtual training, so you don't even have to leave your home. And so please come talk to us. We also have flyers. Ann Elizabeth has flyers at the HDSA table. So we love to have more help. Okay.
Let me just add one thing. So I'm the state advocacy captain, Joyce Serino from South Carolina. So if you live in South Carolina, come and see me. But let me tell you that you don't have to do everything that Shirley and Marty and I are doing. All you have to do is get in contact with them so they can send you a message when it's time to send a message to your senator. It can be as simple as that. You can do it from your bedroom or your living room couch or whatever you want to do. It's as simple as sending a message. We'll compose the message for you. All you have to do is put your name on it. It's really, really simple.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say, advocacy looks very different across the board, right? But I think one of the themes that you may have picked up on is storytelling. We all have a story. We've all experienced this community in different ways. And I know it takes a lot of courage to be forthcoming about your own journey or what you're going through at any given time. But what I have found is when I reveal my status, my risk status, my involvement, the way my mother died, I send an article or I send a link to the HD Reach website, what I find is that I'm surprised. I'm surrounded by other advocates who had no idea that I walked among them. If you can activate the people in your immediate sphere and tell them your story, they can tell your story to others, and that network effect is how we identify and find and bring in the rest of the people that we can't see for whatever reason. Storytelling is really powerful, and it's what moves people emotionally to support you, and it humanizes what we're all going through, right? And yeah, so just emphasize that a lot.
One more comment and one more question. Hi, Shirley Hughes. I just want to say someone made a comment about referencing kind of feeling alone and the word rare. I really don't like the word rare because I feel like our numbers are so much larger than what they're recorded because of the stigma. I've been in that place before. I was my mom's caregiver until just a couple of years ago. She did not have HD. It stems from my father's side of the family. But when I got to a place that I had to focus on me, children were grown, I started looking at the letters, HSG, HDSA, HD Reach, like what do they all mean? And they are all so important. They come together and each one has their specialization. I'm in Eastern North Carolina, so trying to spread services to Eastern North Carolina. If you don't have time to go to some of the conferences, you reach out to the people. My name's on the HDSA website, it's on the HD Reach website. If I can't help you because of location, I will get you to the people that can help you, okay? But you are not alone, okay?
One thing
Thanks,
you guys
Shirley.
asked, and I just wanted to circle back about the clinical trials, is Dr. Moore right here is your best resource. Be careful of clinicaltrials.gov because we have everyone trying to figure out their CAP scores right now. Because they went on clinicaltrials.gov, they're really excited about Novartis, they're really excited about Genentech. What's my CAP score? Oh look, I get to be in this trial. I'm like, did you guys look at TFC? Did you do this? They know, your doctor knows, and the disappointment you're gonna feel when you think you're included because clinicaltrials.gov made you think you were included, and then you see your clinical trial coordinator and they tell you you don't qualify, you don't wanna have to go through that. So work with your medical team when it comes to clinical trials from day one.
All right. So I'm going to, one more question. Yeah, I think our closing question. First, I'd love to thank you all. Your expertise and your guidance is always welcome, and we can't thank you enough. A closing question, I'm going to try and kind of do it like Hot Ones, if you guys are familiar with the talk show. Uh-oh. One moment.
That was the expert.
The lawyers at Hot Ones heard me. All right, cameras over here, people across the board. What's one thing that gives you hope as you sit here today with us? Yeah, Betsy's yelling at us, so.
Every single person in this room. I am not from an HD family. I had no knowledge of this before I started working at a little nonprofit helping HD families. But it's this community. I have truly fallen in love with this community, and I want to stay in it for as long as possible because every single day that I get to work with everyone here is a gift.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I think community is the big word. Again, we all need it. We're all here for each other. You only learn because of everybody in this room. You only feel supported because of everybody in this room and beyond. But we do what we do because of you. And so just thank you all for allowing us to be here.
So since they stole you guys, I'm going to say that what gives me hope is our industry partners. We never in history have had these names in HD, Novartis, we have Teva, we have these wonderful, huge industry partners now. Prolinia, never giving up on us. We're going again. I am thankful that they take a chance on us and they don't give up on us and they keep going. And so because they stole you guys, I'm gonna go to our industry. Our industry partners give me hope that one day we will be a treatable disease and hopefully a curable disease because of all the efforts we've done for so long. We're not looking at fish oil anymore, guys, or blueberries. Thank goodness.
So I'm going to try to give a novel answer. I agree with everything here, but as in my perspective as a physician and a medical educator who works a lot with high schoolers, college students, medical students, residents, and fellows, I can tell you that there is a growing interest in medical trainees in Huntington's disease. And that is a wonderful thing. We've talked before about the scholarship that has been made available this year for Huntington's interested trainees. And it's something that I personally am really passionate about, bringing on these young, intelligent, excited minds to be a part of this family together.
I would have to say the one thing that gives me hope is the question for the longest time is, can we treat the disease? Can we do anything? We know we can. Now we know that. That is huge. It's just now we have to figure out when's the best time. How do we do it the most effective way? Mm-hmm. But going from can to how and when is monumental.
Oh, that's perfect. The one thing that gives me hope, I'm going to nerd out a little bit. Unlike diseases like Alzheimer's disease or cancer, which are polygenic, right? Multiple genes all working in a constellation to activate those diseases. As far as we know, Huntington's disease is monogenic, which makes it really interesting as a starting point for gene therapies. And it's one of the reasons that I believe in continued funding and research to get this to a treatable disease, to potentially find a cure someday, because it's a stepping stone to so many other disease treatments like Alzheimer's and other things like that. So it gives me a lot of confidence that, you know, research, trials, they're not going away until we solve this. So really excited. With that, I know Betsy, I can feel her eyes staring in the back of my head. Let's thank our panelists one more time.